Hello everyone! If you don't know me already, I'm Tara, the dance doctor. Welcome to my channel. In today's lesson, I'm giving you some exercises to help you increase your flexibility and coordination in your torso and shoulders. As always, I'll explain each series of exercises first, and then we will do them with music. And you'll be able to find timestamps for each section of the video in the description box below. Also in the description box is a link to my Patreon page if you want to get early access to my video lessons or you just want to support my YouTube dance school. You can do so by clicking on that link. I'll also be offering some special content for Patreon members only, so that's something you can look forward to if you become a member. We're going to get right into the lesson. I just want to remind you to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the post notifications so you can see when I upload more stuff like this. Now let's get dancing.
Okay, so let's get right into this first series of exercises, which is starting with the shoulders and then gradually working our way into kind of a full body undulation that we're going to use in various directions, okay? For the purpose of this exercise, we are going to just have our feet right underneath our hips for the duration of this exercise while we're working on our torso. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bend and straighten the knees, which is just going to serve as a way for us to kind of feel the gravity of our body as we do this shoulder exercise. And the shoulder exercise is to lift the shoulders up as high as you can and then allow them to drop as if you have no muscles. The bones are just falling down into place. We're not trying to create a controlled movement here. We're lifting and we're dropping. And we are also doing that movement with our knees. So we're going up all the way, down, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop. Okay, you might feel that is a really good exercise for your trapezius to get nice and warmed up, but also to get a little bit tired, which is going to help it relax. Okay, we're going to do the same type of movement now, moving into more of a shoulder roll. So instead of just going straight up and straight down, now I'm going to go up and roll back and drop. Up, back, drop. Up, back, drop. Up, back, drop. Drop. Up, drop. Up, drop. Up, drop, up. Okay? The next movement in this series of exercises, this is kind of a progression, is to now incorporate the rib cage, which is as I go up with the shoulders and in the knees, I'm also bringing my rib cage up and forward. Okay, so I go up and forward and drop back down. And again, I go up and forward, drop, up and forward, drop, up and forward. And as I drop, I'm gently bringing the rib cage in and down. As I come up with the shoulders, I'm lifting the rib cage and bringing it forward, and then I drop and bring the rib cage in to contract and down. I'm dropping it down. So a lot of people sometimes think that this movement is just about going forward and back with the rib cage, but it's also about lifting and coming down so that I'm actually making a circular motion and not just a forward and back motion, okay? So again, I'm going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So I've got the whole upper torso involved in this movement. And what we're going to try to do is get a little bit further in our range of motion every time we do this movement. So for the purpose of this video, although we will do these exercises with music, it's not really about speed. It's more about really pushing your range of motion and feeling like you're opening up your body and your flexibility more than just trying to repeat it at a certain speed, although that is also useful, okay? And then the last movement in this progression is going to be to incorporate the head, neck, and the hips. And so as my rib cage goes forward and up, my hips go back and up. My head goes back and up, and then I reverse it. So as my rib cage goes back, my hips come forward, my head comes forward. And I go again, sequencing through the spine. So I am arching my back and then contracting my back, but I'm also maintaining the coordination of rolling the shoulders, bringing the shoulders up and dropping them back. So this has a rhythmic quality to it as well. It's not just a smooth undulation. We do want to feel that kind of exhaling feeling of dropping down every time we finish the movement. So I go up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop, up, drop. So now that we got our spine nice and warm, we are going to add a little variation on the upper torso movement where we're using our shoulders and our rib cage only. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to do 4 going on a diagonal to the right. So this is where my foot position comes in. I'm not going to turn my feet or my hips. I'm going to turn my upper torso and do the movement on a diagonal, 3, 4, and then I'm going to do the same thing to my left. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll come back to center. 1, 2, 3, 4, shift. 1, 2, 3, 4, shift. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because a lot of movements that we use in this undulating manner don't actually go straight forward and back. Some do, but there are also movements where we're going out on a diagonal. And so it's important to be able to do these movements while you're twisted as well as forward and back, because it's just helping you open up and utilize different muscles and different areas of flexibility. Okay, so now that we worked on warming up the torso and also isolating different parts of the torso, we are going to do a one shoulder, one-sided movement, starting with just a single shoulder roll. So I'm isolating one shoulder the way that I just did in my two shoulder movement. I'm lifting, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop. We do that first, and then we're going to do the roll, lift, drop, and we'll do that on both sides. Lift, drop, drop, really allowing it to feel that one side moving on its own and then in a circular fashion. Same exact movement. You might find one side is easier than the other. That's the purpose. It's always good to do some movements that you do on both sides and then also trying to do it on one side, because that helps you notice which sides of your body generally hold tension or have a little bit less flexibility, so that you can work on those areas. Now we're going to use this movement of the shoulder as a progressive movement again to take us into like a half body roll. So I'm using my shoulder and then my rib cage is coming out on a diagonal and coming back. Shoulder, rib, and sink back to the other side. So whereas our first movement was more circular going forward and back. This one is now more of a lateral movement. So I'm going out on a diagonal and I'm coming back on the opposite diagonal. So I go shoulder, rib, and come to this diagonal in a contracted position. I arch and I contract. Shoulder arch and contract. Shoulder arch and contract. Shoulder arch. And this is just the upper torso for now. Then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Shoulder arch, contract. Shoulder arch, contract. Shoulder arch, contract. Shoulder. I definitely feel like I have a little less flexibility on this side, so it's good for me to notice that as well. Now we are going to incorporate the hips. So we're going to go shoulder, rib cage, and after I finish my contraction to this back diagonal, I'm going to allow the hip to come down underneath, bringing me kind of into a neutral position over this leg. So I go shoulder, rib cage, and hip, just sequencing through the spine. And we'll do the same thing on the other side, starting with the shoulder, up, rib cage, comes over, so starts on this diagonal and comes to the back diagonal, and then I allow my hips to crunch and then sit right underneath my shoulder. So again, I go, starting with the shoulder, up, back, rib, hip, up, back, rib, hip, up, back, rib, hip. Okay, so now we're going to try all of the shoulder and rib cage, hip, undulation exercises, we'll call them, with music. I'm going to do each one in order that you learned them. Half time first, so like I said, you can really focus on trying to get a greater range of motion every single time you do a repetition, and then we will do them real time just to test your ability to do the movement continuously. different directions in the chest, keeping the arms immobile. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my hands, the back of my hand on the small of my back. And for the duration of these exercises, I'm going to try and keep my elbows out to the side. What I'm always telling people is you want to feel as though you're pushing something forward with your elbow, because otherwise what tends to happen as we do these exercises is our wings start flapping, and then we're not truly isolating the part of the body that we're trying to exercise. So I've got my hands on the small of my back. I'm bringing my elbows forward to maintain this nice shape in my arms. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring one shoulder forward at a time. In this particular exercise, I'm actually trying to keep my sternum facing forward and just do shoulder, 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 shoulder. So as you can see, this isn't an exercise about twisting my sternum. It's an exercise about isolating, bringing one shoulder forward and then the other. And as I said before, trying to keep the elbows out to the side as we do this. I feel like I'm releasing a lot of tension as I do this. And don't worry if you feel like you're not moving a lot. That's okay. That's actually part of this type of movement. These types of movements are meant to be a little bit more tightly wound. That's the look that we're going for, is that we have some tension that we're maintaining in the body. Because I'm not rotating my chest, because I'm not moving my arms, the movement isn't meant to be big. What it's supposed to do is simply highlight one part of the body, which in this case is our shoulder. So I'll just show you from the back as well. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Focusing on keeping those elbows out to the side as I do this with the shoulders. Now I'm also going to do this double time and then triple time. So we're going to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we're going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I'm going to go to triple time, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and. Okay, so what I kind of feel is like I'm almost trying to, if you take your arms off your back for just a moment and you held your arms out to the side, it's almost as if I'm trying to rotate this upper arm back, like if I were trying to rotate my hand back, and then I switch and switch and switch and switch. So you see now, because I have my arms loose, I'm allowing that shoulder movement to rotate the entire arm, which might be a good exercise initially for you if this is difficult. And then from here, trying to get that same feeling, and again, the range of motion is going to be a bit smaller because I'm not allowing my arms to move, okay? So now, the next exercise that we're going to do with the hands on the small of the back and the elbows coming forward is a chest pulse. So I'm trying to initiate this movement from my sternum. So I'm going forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. Okay? Now, I can also do this back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward. So, depending on where I start, my emphasis is going to be in a different place. So I want to try going forward first and then emphasizing the back, and then going back first and emphasizing the front movement, because we do use both of these chest isolations when we are dancing Latin dances, okay? So again, I'm going first starting forward. Forward, back, it's almost like a breath, yeah? I'm not moving a lot, I'm not moving my entire rib cage, That's why I really think about this coming from the chest, okay? So I'm going back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. Forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. Now let's start back. So start in neutral and we go back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward. And as you can see, my range of motion isn't enormous, and it's not meant to be, because a lot of times when we do these movements, they're actually pretty fast, okay? So if those alone are challenging for you, stick with that. As an added challenge, if you want to continue to work on your flexibility and coordination in different positions, we can also do both of these exercises, bringing the torso down into like a flat back position. So I am bending my knees a little bit, and I'm coming to a tabletop position, and then coming back up. So I go down, maintaining the elbows out to the side. All the stuff is the same until I get to tabletop, and then come back up. Same thing with the chest pulse. I can go forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, and coming up as well. Or back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, and coming back up. So we are going to, when we do it with music, we will add that on to the end as a challenge. And like I said, if doing it just straight up is difficult for you, when I do the portion where we go forward, you can just stay standing straight up. And it's something I should mention always. You know, I kind of go through movements in a progression, in a sequence. And if you get stuck at any part of the sequence, just feel free to stick with that. Even when we're doing it with music, just stay with the part. Once you start to feel challenged, just stay there, and then eventually you'll be able to do the whole sequence, okay? So now, just like with the first sequence of movements, we're going to do them half time and full time with music. I've briefly covered this in some other videos, but I have gotten requests to go over it in more detail, and I do teach it to my students, and it does take a lot of time and diligence to develop because it requires not only flexibility but coordination. So we're going to start by doing some segmented movements with our rib cage and our hips, just to get used to those movements, and then we will coordinate them so that we can use them simultaneously. So I've done isolations in a few different exercise videos, but we will start with that again here. I'm going to start with my rib cage going forward, side, back, side. Trying to keep it, in this context, trying to keep the hips still. So I'm just opening up all of these movement possibilities, just trying to feel it in my rib cage. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. Just trying to open up. And I'll say one thing that's very important. When I'm doing these circles, the segmented circles, and this does kind of bleed over into when we do the fluid circles, when I go forward and then I go to the side, I'm staying forward. And then from this forward side position, I'm going back. And then from back, when I go to the side, I'm staying back as I move to the side. Then I come forward, I stay forward, and I move to the side, and I go back, and I stay back and move to the side. That's what helps us kind of round out our circle, because a lot of people will kind of come back into the center and then go back, and then that makes for kind of an odd circle. When we smooth it out, they end up kind of doing like a figure eight, and they're not really comfortable with, like, I give the image of like you're inside a jar and you're trying to clean the edges of the jar with your rib cage, okay? We'll do the same thing with the hips. So I go forward, stay forward, move to the side, go back, stay back, move to the side, come forward, stay forward, move to the side, back, stay back, move to the side, forward, side, back, side, forward, side, back, side. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Forward, side, back, side, forward, side, back, side, forward, side, back, side, forward, side, back, side. Trying to keep the flexion in our knees the entire time. A lot of times people will start to do different things with the knees as we do this, and in this particular exercise, we are trying to keep our knees gently flexed the entire time. Now, we're going to do the same thing that we just did with both parts of the body. So the rule is, if my rib cage is going forward, my hips are going back. If my rib cage is going to the right, my hips are going to the left. So we're doing the same movements that we just did individually at the same time, but in opposite directions, okay? That being said, both parts of my body are rotating in the same direction. They're just going at opposite times. Yeah, so it's not like my hips are going to the left while my rib cage goes to the right. I don't know if that's even physically possible. I'm sure someone can do it, but I can't. I'm trying to get them to both rotate in the same direction, but again, one is behind the other, okay? So I'm going forward with the, I'll do it facing one. I'll go forward with the rib cage, back with the hips. Right with the rib cage, left with the hips. Remembering that if I went forward with the ribs, I'm going to stay forward as I go to the right. If I went back with the hips, I'm going to stay back as I go to the left. Then I'm going to reverse it. So my rib cage goes back, my hips come forward, and rib cage to the left, hips to the right. And again, around, and we go. Rib cage forward, rib cage side, back, and left. And hips go back, left, forward, and right. So you may find that this is kind of like a brain teaser at the moment, but I have helped all different levels of dancers be able to achieve this movement making this video for you so that you have something to practice with. So let's go to the other side now. We go here. So I'm always going to start this movement by going forward with the rib cage and back with the hips, and then I can move to whichever side I'm practicing. So I go forward with the rib cage, back with the hips, and I'm going to go to the left first with the rib cage, right with the hips, and around. Keeping the knees bent, keeping the weight totally between the feet. Okay, so I'm not moving my weight from side to side as I do this. I'll start again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if this is easy for you, then I encourage you to try to test the limits of your range of motion in each direction. Okay? So again, if that's challenging for you, stick with that. If you feel like you got that, then we're going to smooth it out and do these two simultaneous movements, but without the segments breaking everything up. So I'm still doing a circle, but now I'm not stopping at every point, okay? So I'll do it facing away. First with the rib cage going forward and to the right, and the hips going back and to the left. I go 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's do the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now we're going to try this again, half time and full time, or real time with music. To increase our flexibility and coordination in our torso is sequencing from the rib down to the hip and then from the hip up to the rib, okay? So we're gonna start with the rib down to the hip first. This is a movement that we use a lot in different dances, but I'm thinking specifically about how I use it in rumba, in Wahala, because that tends to be one of the more difficult areas for my students, and so that's why I'm making this, because if my students are having these difficulties, of course, other dancers are as well. So for these exercises, just to make sure that the arms aren't distracting and kind of taking us off track, I'm just gonna hold them out to the side, also so that if you're looking in the mirror, you can really see the sequence of your body without the arms getting in the way. So again, starting with our feet underneath our hips, I'm going to start by taking the rib cage and the shoulder out on a diagonal. Okay, so I'm using this same feeling in the shoulder where I'm rotating the shoulder forward and I'm also taking my rib cage out on a diagonal, and then I'm going to crunch here and allow the hip to sit down. And I'm going to go on the other side, rib cage and shoulder and hip. Rib cage and shoulder, hip. Shoulder, rib cage, hip sits, shoulder, rib cage, hip. Shoulder, rib cage. So as you can see, what naturally happens when I do my shoulder and my rib cage movement, my hip naturally goes to the opposite side. Just like in the movement that we were just working on, the hip and the rib cage are constantly at odds with one another. So if I'm stretching out to this side with my rib cage and my shoulder, my hip naturally goes to the other side, and then to finish it, I just allow it to drop down in kind of a pendulum swing fashion. And I go shoulder and rib, let the hip drop down. Shoulder and rib, let the hip drop down. Shoulder and rib, hip, shoulder and rib, hip. Okay, and then we can also do that more continuously. Shoulder, so that we're feeling that sequencing happening in the body in a more continuous fashion. Okay? We're also going to do, like I said, the opposite. So I'm also going to look at hip lifting up, which naturally sends my rib cage over to the other side, because otherwise I would fall in that direction. Yeah, our torso is constantly kind of creating equilibrium for us. So I'm using my oblique muscles to lift that hip, and then I'm going to allow the rib cage to exaggerate in this direction, and then lift up and over the hip. So I go rib cage lifts, I'm going to break in the torso, and then from that breaking point, this is actually, as you can see, kind of lifting up toward the ceiling, and I'm just going to follow that trajectory and then sit it right on top of my hip. And again, lift the hip on the other side, break, and lift the rib cage up and over. Lift the hip, break, and it's like there's a shelf here that I need to lift up and over to put my rib cage on. Lift the hip, break, and lift the rib cage. Hip, break, lift the rib cage. Hip, when I say break, what I mean is I'm allowing my spine to curve to the side, stretch this side, and then lift it up and drop it down on top of the hip. Okay, I'll do it facing away once. Hip, break, rib. Hip, break, rib. And if we did it more continuously, hip, rib, hip, break, 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 rib. Okay? So now let's try those ones with music.
So much for joining me for today's lesson. Leave a comment below and let me know how you did. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the post notifications for my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram at Dance Doctor Online. Until next time, keep dancing.